Welcome everyone to CPS Lectures number 150 with Julie Lythcott-Haims on Your Turn, How to Be an Adult. So Katie and I were talking, it's just sort of this thing, like, when do you become an adult? And we know a few of us felt like one. Some of us felt like one when we turned 18. I know all the time now, I run into moments where I don't feel like one right this moment. And this is where you this is where you kind of bring us all into this force, Julie, that you are, a force that is Julie Lythcott-Haims. And thankfully, she's here with us to help young people navigate this really, really, really challenging transition, or what can be a really challenging transition. So in Your Turn, Julie takes this super deep dive into what is, I guess, quote unquote, what does adulting mean? And so she's drawing on all of this time that she's spent herself growing up, her past parenting research, her time at Stanford as the Dean of Freshmen, approaching a decade there, and just really delivers this powerful set of lessons on why growing up is not so much this end goal and much more of a journey. So this in a time of life that has kind of looked anything but stable, Julie guides us with a voice that's just really filled with compassion to keep us grounded on all of this stuff, like rejecting perfection and how to actually do that, how to think about coping, and even kind of how to find a new superpower in gratitude in particular. So, as the New York Times best-selling author Dan Pink has said of Julie, she's one of America's finest minds and fiercest voices. It was so cool when he said that, Julie. I don't know what it was like. One of my questions is going to be like, what did you think when you heard that? Because he just got you. That is exactly right. Finest minds, fiercest voices. And what he said is, with this remarkable book, Julie establishes herself as something else, the mentor our young people deserve. So Your Turn, he said, is simultaneously electrifying and reassuring, a jaw-dropping, spine-tingling work that will change many lives. And as I think everybody knows here, Julie is a writer, speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. She believes in humans and is deeply interested in sort of what gets in our way. She's the author of the Anti-Helicopter Parenting Manifesto, How to Raise an Adult, that gave rise to a very popular TED Talk. And I think that link is going right in. We're so lucky that we got to host her when How to Raise an Adult came out. We also had the pleasure of hosting Julie for CPS Lectures on when she wrote Real American, her award-winning memoir. So, and that was all about her experiences as somebody Black, somebody biracial in white spaces. And her books have given readers honest, powerful lessons on parenting, writing, healing, and ultimately growing. Julie has included a commitment to inclusivity in Your Turn, sharing that authors can and must write inclusive books. And Katie's also sharing that. Julie is a former corporate lawyer. As I said, Stanford Dean, holds a BA from Stanford, a JD from Harvard, and MFA in writing from California College of the Arts. And Your Turn is the third book. So if you don't have it already, you want to run, not walk, to pick up this book. We're also putting links in where you can pick it up from local bookstores or from bookshop.org. So please also leave a review on Amazon, and we all know how important these are. And if you have a copy already, please purchase another one for a friend or as a wonderful gift. So because we're at 150, and that is kind of this big thing, for, I think, for me and my brother, and for our friends who helped us make CPS Lectures. I'm not really gonna go through too much about the background of our series, just except to say to everybody, I love that you have made it so possible to do this. But I'm gonna thank diaTribe, the diaTribe Foundation. That's our nonprofit that started in 2013 officially. We're now a program of the diaTribe Foundation, and that's because our board was really cool about really recognizing emotional well-being and that we all need it, and we all kind of crave community, and that's why this works every single time. And that's one of the reasons that this series is so close to my heart. Wanted to say a very special thank you, of course, to Katie Brower. She really makes our series sing. She has put just so much thinking behind how you make it easy for people, and I know everybody here has benefited from that. So Katie, it's amazing. I honestly, I can remember all of our lectures vividly, but I can't think of what it would be like to do this without you. So also want to say thank you for, as some of you have before, it's wonderful when diaTribe.org receives gifts. We love that. There's never any pressure to do that, but it's really, it's wonderful. And a lot of you did that tonight. So thank you very much for that. If you ever want to do that, you can go to diaTribe.org/donate. And thank you for considering a gift if you're in a position to do so. I'm so incredibly excited to see dozens and dozens of people here. Before we start our conversation with Julie, I'm gonna just say, if this were our living room, we would get to ask you this question, and we would get to hear what you had to say out loud. So we'll ask you to put it in chat instead of asking everyone to go around the room, because we want to hear from Julie. We want to start hearing from her right away. But we're just going to ask you to put into chat, if you would, what's a piece of advice that you wish that you would have received when you were first entering adult life?
Didn't hear the question, honey.
Yeah. What's a piece of advice that you wish you would have received, that you wish you would have gotten when you were first entering adult life? And I know, and it's so interesting. I mean, again, thank you everybody for coming here. I mean, I know, I know that some people here probably felt like they entered adult life, when they were much younger than others. So you can define it however you would like. I hope that's good. Julie, what an amazing thing to have you back with us. Yeah, I mean, congratulations. Wow, day 28 of this momentous book. I want to ask you, the first thing is about the commitment to inclusion. So first of all, that's my first question for you. You know that we're going to open it up to others to ask questions, and you guys, if you've been here before, you can say that you can send Katie the question, you can send me the question. If you want to ask the question, you can raise your hand, and we'll be asking different people to unmute. We're going to go right into the Q&A, which is really cool. And I love doing all of this with you. So I'm not going to have very many questions of my own. But I love all of you for filling up the chat. And yeah, Julie, my God, like unplugged. This is big. So thank you.
Well, Kelly Close, I think along with the 63 other people who aren't you, just find myself filled with gratitude for your existence, who you are, how you show up with humans, how you gather us in community and strengthen us as individuals. Ron Lieber said to me years ago, when your book gets published, if you get invited to go to this woman's living room, say yes. It will rock your world. And I was fortunate in that you did invite me with How to Raise an Adult, which came out in 2015. And here I am in 2021. I didn't know I was going to write 3 books. And I've just been so fortunate every step of the way to have you championing my work. And every one of us who's here, who has been in your home, in the living room, and knows the vibe, knows what a tremendously special gathering you achieve because of how you set the room, how you know, the vibe is very intentionally created. How we feel when we're with you and with each other is, I think, a very unique and special thing, at least in my life it is. And it strikes me that, you know, the pandemic has taught us just how much we all mean to one another, how much we need human connection. And I think we're going to exit this pandemic, God willing, soon, being more intentional about the spaces and places in which we want to put ourselves, paring away the things that are meh, I'm mad about this, don't do it. Invest in the things that matter. And I think for us, CPS is an example of how an intentionally created community can transform our week, our lives, our sense of self, sense of what matters. So I'm honored to be back. Really grateful that you continue to be a champion of my work. Katie, also thankful for you for all the work that you do. All of you in the diaTribe community, all of you in the CPS lectures community, all of you who are here because you saw a social media post that you liked. I'm grateful for all of you, to all of you, for being here and spending your Tuesday night with me, whatever time zone you're in. I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And some of you I know are, you know, hours ahead, maybe some hours behind. I do want to say, as I try to acknowledge every time I have the good fortune to be in Kelly's presence as part of CPS, that this lecture series, did you say this is number 150? Number 150, this CPS lecture series honors Cyril Patrick Shaughnessy Jr., Kelly's father, who died in 2002. And I walk this world as a fatherless daughter myself, Kelly. I know my own daddy passed 1995, long time ago, and I'm 53. But as I say in this book, what our parents think of us matters to us. Sometimes it drives us crazy that it matters. Why does it matter, right? It does. There's some kind of anthropologically, biological instinct, need to know, you know, these people on whose shoulders we stand still somehow know what we're up to. So it's emotional. It's emotional to be part of a lecture series that exists because a beloved person died. And I just think it's an even greater honor for that reason. So anyway, big thanks. Very grateful. Now to your question. My book is a nonfiction book about a stage of life humans enter if they survive childhood. Okay. Adulting isn't a magical, mysterious time of life. It is magical. It is mysterious, but entering it is not a mystery. It doesn't happen magically. In childhood, we are largely the responsibility of someone else. We start being carried in someone's body. Then we are carried between the crook of their neck and their shoulder. And then we're carried on their hip. And then we're held by the hand. Sometimes we're carried on the shoulder, right? Riding on their shoulders. And we're held by the hand. And then at some point, we don't have our hands held anymore, but our people who are caring for us are still there, near, keeping watch, until we can make our own way. Adulting is being able to largely make your own way. Yes, there are all kinds of circumstances that mean we might need a little bit more care, a little bit more attention, a little bit more help. But barring a significant special need, we more or less make our own way. It doesn't mean that we walk away from love, care, kindness, interdependence, right? All of that remains. But adulting is knowing I am more or less now responsible for my body, my bills, my belongings. I call it taking care of business. It's easy to remember because they all begin with B, which I need these mnemonics to make it through these days, right? So that's what adulting is. And so I've written this book on how to do it, not purporting to be an expert. I mean, either we all are or none of us is. It's just living life. But I am trying to help us all live our best life. And so I've written this book to try to be of use, to try to shine a warm light back if I'm older and therefore farther into this journey of life than those coming up behind me, I'm turning around. This book is a warm light, not a scary light of fluorescence that, just makes you want to go like this. No, it's a warm light that tries to illuminate and make clear the things that feel uncertain or problematic or worrisome. This book is also trying to be a mirror that I just hold up to the reader, and I'm asking the reader to see yourself. Use this book to see yourself more clearly. I'm not here to tell you what to do with this one wild and precious life, as the late poet Mary Oliver put it. I am here with profound respect for you as the individual you are. So if I'm going to write, I told Kelly I wasn't going to do a preamble, but I realized I can hear myself as sort of turning into a preamble, but I'm almost done. I used to be a corporate litigator, so forgive me. I like to talk, but I really want to get to your questions. So how am I going to write a big bouncing baby boy of a book for everybody about a subject, about a stage we all go through, and not deliberately put the stories of people from all walks of life in its pages? As a Black and biracial person who came into this world uncontemplated, it was illegal for my parents to be married in a number of states when they married. I exist because people transgress the rules. I have been otherized since the minute I was conceived. And I arrived and got the clear message early. I mean, that's the subject of my second book on dealing with that stuff. I know what it is like to be presumed to be the other, the exception, the asterisk. Oh, and if you're Black, sit over here, right? Oh, and if you're this, like, go to page 400 where we have a resource that might help you. No, this book aims from page 1 to be respectful of any human who manages to be reading it or listening to it or having it read to them. Okay. This book tries hard to be inherently inclusive of so many different walks of life. I know I have failed. I have not achieved that 100%, but I have gone a long way. And I have written a commitment to inclusion. This is the card version of it. I think Katie put the link in the chat to where it lives on my website. It's downloadable. And it is my articulation, 2 pages of why inclusion matters and how I've gone about trying to do it. And I give some examples of the various communities that I have tried to represent, communities, identities, lived experiences that I've tried to represent in these pages. I'm trying to demonstrate to my fellow authors, not only that we should, because I think in this America, in the last year plus, a lot of folks have gotten more awakened to the imperative of inclusion. I am trying to demonstrate not only the imperative, but that it is possible. And so this book is just going to share all kinds of stories from folks who've grown up with an opioid addicted mother in Appalachia to folks surrounded by law enforcement with their guns drawn because they're the only Black person in this fight that's going on. And those stories are sort of ripped from the headlines, but they are stories that attend a certain identity given where you are and where you grow up, and all kinds of other stories. And my hope is that, there's the kid who's from Texas, straight white guy in Texas, Dallas, who's a theater kid, theater from middle school on, graduates SMU, tries to make his dad proud. Dad does not believe in theater, doesn't get it, needs him to have a real job. And his story is one of deep pain of estrangement from a parent who refused to see this young person as he is. And he has accepted that and made a life without his father. But there's another story of reconciliation with a parent to show how that's done. These are just examples of the lessons, whether it's money or self-care or what to do for work, how to do the work that lights you up, or how to find yourself in relationship with the people you want to be in relationship with, and how to survive the shitty things that happen in life, and how to access your superpowers, gratitude, mindfulness, kindness, and more. Yes, how to fend for yourself, take care of basics. All of these topics are explicated through the stories of real humans who show you how to get it done. So that's why I've done this. And, it does represent, I think, my evolution as a human and a writer, and my sense of agency that in 3 books, after 3 books, or with the launching of the 3rd book, I now have a little bit more to say and more of an obligation to help shape what we are doing when we publish books. And so if this appeals to you, please check it out. I think in particular, you'll find that I'm acknowledging that we all have something, whether it's our mind, our body, our differences around learning, our mental health challenges, our diseases, our diagnoses, or circumstances for which there is not a diagnosis, but it's a thing that needs to be managed and honored and respected and attended to. I'm leaning heavily into that, in part because 1 in 2 18-year-olds has a diagnosis. And it ain't no asterisk on page 400. Oh, if you have a diagnosis, see Appendix J. This book acknowledges from jump something grandparents don't get about kids today. They say, what is it with kids today? What's wrong? Well, guess what, Grandpa? Things have changed, and it's not their fault. There's nothing wrong, right? This is just, our human community is evolving and knowing itself better, and diagnosing and treating and resolving and supporting and embracing the differences, the myriad differences that comprise this human population and make us all normal. So there you go. I'll try to have much shorter answers to every other question.
Oh my God, no, not at all. So I'm watching, and people should feel free if they would like to raise their hand, or because I might, or just whatever, if we're missing your question. I just get so mesmerized by Julie and listening to her. I guess, I'm really dying to know, like, God, tell us about some of your experiences, like in the last 28 days, like, things that young people have said to you.
Yeah. So this book is pitched at 18 to 34. It is in direct response to millennials saying, I don't want to adult. I don't know how to adult. Adulting is scary. This is me saying, okay, I see that. I want to respect that. I want to help you. Now, what I've also heard, so we hope these folks are reading it, 18 to 34, because they seem to be, it's definitely written for them, to them. The narrative voice is speaking as if they are one-on-one with me having coffee. I've also heard from 40, 50, 60, 70 somethings. Oh, I'm seeing myself in this book. I've had people write me saying, I feel like I've got permission now to change my job, to commit to a relationship, to leave a relationship. People, like I said, it's a mirror. It's just going to show you what you want to see about your own life. And so that's been an unexpected pleasure. Back to young people, I'm hearing from some late teens, like 18, 19-year-olds, who are saying, I'm reading this book, my parent is reading the book, and I am flagging page whatever and saying, hey, could we talk about this? The book is sort of a neutral third party, or a portal, or a doorway, opening what might be a difficult conversation between young person and parent. Or, making it easier to, facilitating that. So I've heard from young people who've said, there's so much in here. I have flagged it up and I'm putting it on my bedside table as a reference tool. Okay. It's stories, it's self-help tips and my memoir from my life and stories from these 31 other people. It comes in the advice comes in different methods or modes because people learn differently. So some people are flagging it up like it's, I don't know, Roget's thesaurus. I'm not sure, but others are, some people have said I couldn't put it down. I started it yesterday and I stayed up all night and I finished the last 100 pages this morning. And I'm like, wow, that's a quick reader. There's a lot here. Some are really slowing down and taking notes. There's a study guide at the back, which frankly, I wish we had put instead of just at the back. Some people won't even notice it till they get to the end. And they're going to say, well, that would have been useful to have up front. It's just 4 questions that go with each chapter. And so that's a key learning. Study guide useful, but In the audiobook, it follows each chapter. In the printed book, it comes at the end. So, live and learn. The paperback will be all the better for that lesson that we learned.
Kelly, do you want me to ask my question?
Yeah, that's great.
I was typing
Yeah.
it, and I will say it instead. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie. Julie, thank you so much for being here. And Kelly, so I don't know if people saw it, but a woman, and I maybe will pronounce her name incorrectly, Emily Ishfani Smith, wrote a guest essay in the New York Times today, and I'll put it in the chat. And it basically said the expectations that parents have on their kids have increased, on their teenagers have increased massively during the pandemic, rather than only taking care of their kids and just fueling this mental health crisis. So my question to Julie or to others is, how do we get this to stop? I've kind of given up on parents. So is there, like, how do we really fuel young adults to push back or to take care of themselves in these situations?
Carrie, I haven't seen that essay, but I really appreciate you bringing it up, and please do pop it in the chat. I know I and others will definitely want to check that out. I had not gleaned that parents are putting had higher expectations of kids in the pandemic. So I'm saddened to hear that. I mean, in some families, everyone's had to step up because things are tough. And but in more privileged families, I'm not sure if that means academic pressure or pressure to simply hold your mental health together because no one can help you. I'm not sure. So I'll be interested. What give us 3 bullet points on what the increased pressure is so I know what to respond to.
I think it's similar to, people saw the article in the Atlantic several months ago about privileged parents who are concerned that their children are not going to achieve to the level that they expect of them, and a sense of scarcity around college slots or professional careers.
Okay. I didn't want to assume that, but I didn't want to articulate that, but I assumed and wanted confirmation. So thank you. Look, here's what we can do. If we are that parent, we need to go get some therapy and figure out why we're micromanaging our kid like a racehorse or like a greyhound dog in a greyhound dog race. This is childhood. It's meant to be a life, not a drudgery. Outside of real financial struggle, a childhood is meant to have a bit of cushion and a bit of downtime and playtime and joy in it. These kids are not, they're not stocks we're managing in the stock market, just trying to increase their value. They're human beings given to us by the universe or God or whoever you believe we got here. And it's time for us to go get some therapy about why we feel so insecure about how our kids are performing. What I want to say to those of us who have the pleasure and good fortune and honor to be a mentor to a child that belongs to someone else, whether we're auntie, uncle, whether we are mentor, coach, whether we're teacher, just some other relative, family friend, we have the power to show up in that kid's life. You know, the research, it says one caring adult can completely make a difference in the life of a child. If you have that young person in your midst, you can be the person who shows up in their life in person, in the kitchen or in the backyard or on Zoom and treats them with dignity and kindness. Here's what you do. When you see the young person, you say, "It is so good to see you. How are you?" And you let a smile warm your face and curiosity warm your eyes, and you pause. You don't ask about where you applying to college. Are you applying to college? SAT, ACT, how many APs, no. You're trying to show up to value the soul, the spirit inside this body, inside this being who craves desperately to be cared for and loved and known as they are, not as a function of what they achieve or where they get admitted. All right? You can ask, is there anyone special in your life I should know about? Notice that this question is gender neutral. It does not presume that you know the pronoun of the person or the gender of the person they're attracted to. It's a question that opens rather than closes conversation. Ask them, what's good in your life these days? Tell me more. Okay. Their closest parents, closest adults to them, parents are probably, what happened on the science test? Have you done your math homework? You're not asking that. You're like, I seek to know you. You're letting them lead with the topics that matter to them. If you have a memory of the last time you saw them or chatted with them and they told you about some weird science thing they're into, weird to you because that's not your bit, say to them, you remember that science thing you were telling me about? How's that going? Curiosity, respect. Or, they've got a guitar propped up in their room. Like, hey, are you getting any time on that guitar? I know how much you love it. You're leaning in. Look, you're just treating them the way, frankly, we all yearn to be treated. We don't want to be valued or cared about when we got the promotion or got the raise or got the new car. We want to be valued and cared about on our most mediocre days. Okay? You're just trying to do that. That is gold to a teenager and a young adult. Absolute gold. My chapter on stop pleasing others, they have no idea who you are, opens by acknowledging how excruciating it is at Thanksgiving, a family wedding, or some other event that brings relatives together. Some relative you haven't seen in a while comes over and asks one of those questions. And your eyes shifts, and I name the questions. Where are you applying to college? Where are you working? Where did you study and got a girlfriend? And your eyes shift sideways and back to center again, literally shuffling through all the possible responses, wondering which response is going to please this person and which response is the honest response. And often those are not the same. So we have the capacity to show up more effectively for the young people in our lives. And let me just give you a little proof of why I know, just one example of why I know this works and is valuable. College admissions deans have sometimes asked the question, tell us about a moment, a favorite childhood moment. I don't know how they articulate the question, but it's a broad question seeking any possible answer. And the stories that are most captivating are stories about, I spent time with my grandmother learning to make bread from the old country. I sat down with my great aunt and she showed me this locket from, 18, whatever that she had. Or my grandfather took me fishing. These sound like very gender stereotypical answers, but in other words, I forget, the question was, what is the best conversation you've had? That's what it was. And so it was a conversation I had with Auntie looking at the locket, looking with Grandma dealing with the bread, with Grandpa fishing. Why? Because those were conversations that had nothing to do with how are you doing in school right now, right? Are we proud of you yet? It was just ease, time, learning, feeling cherished. They want to feel cherished. And if they're not feeling cherished at home, we can show up as bolsters. We can be the caring adults on the edges who check in enough so that kid knows I got a lifeline there. And I will refer to you in my book, without knowing you, I refer to these folks in the lives of young people as trusted others. I say at some point, when you need to have a difficult conversation with your parents about what you're going to major in, where you're going to go to school, what you want to do for work, where you want to go to grad school, what you want to study, who you're in love with, I say, here's how to set up that conversation for success. And oh, by the way, tap one of your trusted others. Give them a heads up. This trusted other who is in your corner, loves you no matter what. Give them a heads up. I'm about to talk to my parents about XYZ. Let them do some of the heavy lifting. Put them on alert when the conversation will be happening so they can check in with your folks or be ready for the folks who are going to reach out to them and say, oh my God, Junior just told us this. Trusted others become that person who is the buffer, who is the mediator, or just the informal, rational, reasonable person who can help that young adult on their way, on their path, by taking some of the heat off that might come from parents.
I think Terry has a quick follow-up. Do you have a quick? No. Okay, so
I have a related follow-up.
okay,
If that's okay.
Chad.
So it makes me wonder that, Julie, one of your sort of key touch points for me is the YouTube of you giving a speech at Gunn about college, and that is, so for those who don't know, see if I'll paraphrase it correctly. It's basically like, chill out. There's 250 colleges that are awesome. If you don't get into one of the U.S. News and World Report colleges, it's going to be fine. That'd be my kind of summary of it. And so much pressure is around college. So my question is, like, have you found that, I don't even know how long ago that was a while ago, but have you found, do you think have that changed people to like sort of counteract this, dynamic that Carrie's pointing out? Or, was it preaching to the choir? And so people sort of that already believe it, or like, what's your sense of like how much that mindset has been adopted since then?
Chad, thanks. It was a TEDx Gunn High School. I did it in January of 2015. So about 6 months before my book came out, How to Raise an Adult. So it was my kid version of the talk I would be trying to give around this book. And then ultimately I gave a big TED talk on the subject about 9 months later. And I think let's leave aside the choir, so there's definitely the choir that I'm always preaching to, but then there are the people who are willing to listen to the choir or just the non-choir, let's say. And I think there's sort of a U distribution there. There are those who have doubled down and gotten worse, like the college admission scandal highlighted. The parents who are like, I don't care. I will use my money, my affluence, my influence to buy my child a spot. I will basically airlift them with my resources and bribery and so on to the summit I have in mind for them and deposit them there. It's that arms race or race, whatever, it's gotten worse. But then there's the other side of the U curve, the people who've been like, yep, totally get it. You do not need to convince me it's a problem. I'm seeing it in my neighbors, in my niece and nephew, in my hometown. I see, what is happening, and we are shifting accordingly. I get letters from people, texts, not text, but direct messages on Twitter and Instagram and whatnot saying, this book gave me permission to completely change up how I parented, or there's a group of us now that have adopted this, because it's lonely. If you're the only parent who's not parenting in that micromanagey, helicoptery, act like your child is a racehorse kind of style, it can be lonely because we need peers. We're social species. We don't want to be ostracized. So parents finding groups and deciding and committing, and then entire communities committing. And the question I put to them often when I'm giving that keynote is, dare to ask the children in this town what it feels like to be a child here. Dare to ask them what it feels like to go to this school. Dare to listen to what they say. Commit in advance to taking the advice of your children. Childhood is rough right now in communities of privilege. Sunil Luthar is probably the leading psychological researcher who's documented the extent to which children in privileged environments are struggling with tremendously high rates of anxiety and depression related to this micromanagement that develops a learned helplessness in them. Doesn't matter how fancy their house is or whatever brand name, high school they attend. If they are overmanaged, they're not developing agency and resilience, and this leads to anxiety and depression. And when people see that evidence, it motivates them to pivot. So I'm seeing both.
Thanks.
We'll keep looking for people, Julie, who want to jump in. I know I'm seeing some questions that are directly to me and some that are a little louder, some that are out. I don't know, Allison, you have a bunch of interesting questions in here. I'm just going to pause for a second to see if you want to ask them. I'm not totally positive which Allison it is.
So that was me, but it was less of a question for Julie, but more of, I noticed, like, I'm obviously on the younger side of this target audience, and I see a lot of people on here that look like their parents themselves, and it's just like I've had to learn how to help myself out over the years because I could never learn how to articulate what I needed as a kid to make myself a better teenager and adult. So I kind of learned it later in retrospect. And it improved the relationship I have with my parents to become a better person. So it was like learning how to talk towards like your child about what they need in that moment versus necessarily trying to check in on everything like Julie was talking about, or you know, oh, you're having a hard time, what's going on, how do I fix it? My mom's you know, a nurse, and she's very much the I don't want you to be in pain, I want to help fix you. And I didn't know how to fix me at the time because I didn't know what I was feeling, or I wasn't in the right mental state for it. And instead of that giving me confidence to come out and improve things like my social skills or trying to look for a job so that I could have something to put on my applications for college, or even looking for a college to go to or a job. Like it was just so overwhelming because I felt like I needed to have the answers to everything for my parents for what I was doing versus I'm overwhelmed right now. I need my space.
Right.
When I'm in a better mental health state, I'll come to you where I need help.
Allison, how old are you? May I ask, or roughly how old are you?
I just turned 24.
Okay, beautiful. So thank you for sharing all that. Yes, and let them have their feelings is just such a key message for us as parents. I think I learned this from Brene Brown, who says to us as parents, we want to take our kids' pain away, but no one can take someone else's pain away. And moreover, it's as if their pain doesn't matter and isn't valid, or we're afraid of their pain if we just sort of gloss over the actual pain of it and try to go to the fixing. So I try to channel my inner Brene Brown constantly. I fail a lot, but I'm trying. So there's Brene Brown we can look to for guidance. The Atlantic, just over a year ago, came out with this devastating article about children's anxiety and about how we parents, when we take a child's fear and curate the environment so they never have to experience it, like child can't be alone, child only eats certain things, not talking about allergies, but just palate. Child is afraid of the dark. If we're like, okay, you'll never be alone, you'll never be in the dark, you'll only ever have these foods, or we'll always make sure you have these, these foods you like. We take that fear, according to the research done at Yale by Ellie Leibowitz, by curating the environment so those things are always taken care of, we can turn that fear unwittingly into an overblown anxiety. It's almost like we're saying that fear you have of being alone or in the dark or whatever is you're right. It is such a scary thing. We will create an environment where that never happens. Well, of course, then it becomes this like, oh no, even my parents think it's this terrible thing. What we're supposed to do is empathize, like, wow, you're afraid. That is so, tell us more. Tell us whatever you'd like us to know, like lean in, listen, be compassionate, offer empathy, don't try to fix. And then simply express some optimism. Like, I know this is really hard for you now, but I also know that one day it won't be, that one day it'll be easier than it is now. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Well, I didn't read that article. I mean, that article came out last year. My kids were 20 and 18. Like, thanks. I could have used this article when they were 5 and 7. So when the pandemic hit, my then 18-year-old daughter came home from college, spring break ruined, turned into, entire semester virtual at home. And she was having a really rough time with her mental health. And I, she'd always been the quote unquote easier child. I mean, I'm using labels on purpose because I'm showing us parents what we do. And, so she was sort of in a huff because I was trying to have these family meetings and talk about how we feel. And she was like, I don't want to, I will come, but I don't want to share. And I was like, I think I felt judged by that, or I felt, bad. And so then all my feelings were getting into it. And finally, when the meeting was over, she just left the table, went out of the house, and almost kind of slammed the front door. So I look around and I'm feeling, terrible, and I'm trying to do a family event that's helpful, and it turns out to lead to this. And I really regulated my own emotions. Like, Julie, this is not about you. Julie, you're the grown up here. See if you can show up for your daughter the way she needs. So I went outside. I saw her just sitting on the driveway. And I just went kind of, in front of her. So like we were face to face if she chose to look up. And I squatted down in the driveway. So we're at the same level. And I said, Avery, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to get it right, but I'm often getting it wrong. I want you to know that I love you and that I am always here, always. And I'm doing my best to get it right. But I'm going to mess up at times. But please know I'm always trying. And then I just smiled and walked away. Gave her space. It wasn't about, oh, come here. Blah, blah, blah. Within 15 minutes, my child was here in my yard pod in that chair that you can see over in the corner. That's all kinds of books and stuff on it. She just knocked and came in and sat there and dangled her leg over the edge. And we didn't talk about what had happened. She was just letting me know that I had reached out through the howling darkness and she had seen my hand and trusted she could grab it when she wanted to. And she did. With my son, who's now 21, we have had a pattern we have learned through family therapy of treating him as fragile. Like, oh, this is going to be tough to talk to Sawyer about. So let's not talk to him about it. Or let's pick, because we're worried about his emotion. And we've gotten real clear that's not helpful. And we need to be able to talk, all of us, about the things and not be afraid of somebody else's inability to handle something. And that's been, I thought I was lovingly handling this kid with soft gloves. The antidote isn't treat him with hard gloves. It's like treat him as a human who can grow and who can deal with things and do things. And one day he said to me, I've got to have a tough conversation with the guy I'm working for this summer. He said this a month ago. He's like, I'm nervous. This conversation is going to be hard for all kinds of reasons. And instead of like, no, it won't, or, oh no, let me see if I can fix. I was like, yeah, tell me more. If you want to, I'm here. And he told me more. And I was like, yeah, that does sound hard, and I wish you all the best with that. Let me know if I can help. And then I went on and did something else. And then when I left the room 3 minutes later, I said, you know what, Soy? I hear you that's going to be hard. You do hard things. And I smiled. He looked at me like, I do hard things. That reframe, was my attempt to fix a little bit, right? You do hard things. But it wasn't I'm fixing you. It was more, I think I'm rooting for you. And he took it in that spirit. And I was proud of myself for how I handled that. So, Allison, we parents are very much a work in progress. And I think the more we can own that and be clear with our kids, when I have shown up with my kids with apology, like, I know I just messed that up. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I'm open to your feedback. They come back at me with heart emojis and like, it's okay, Mom, I appreciate it. Like everything gets resolved. Yeah. If I'm in that defensive, like, well, wait, but you don't understand. I'm just trying to, the number of times my daughter still has to say, Mom, I'm calling to vent. I don't want you to fix.
I've definitely done that.
I'm a fixer, but I'm really working on it.
Being someone who's very hyper aware of my mental state and my body for various ailments I go through, being able to come forward with that and just be like, hey, I'm going through this today. So like, I may not be on my best, and they can be like, all right, sure. And not only did it help repair a lot of the issues I was having with my mom, but I started being able to detect my dad a lot more, because then he was willing to try to meet me on an emotional level instead of just, yeah, I'm here to help you with your schoolwork, like,
Right.
Which was really nice to have.
Right. I hope you'll check out the book, Allison. I think you'll
plan on it.
Okay. I'd love to know what you think is what I'm trying to say. I really would love to hear your feedback. So thank you. Thanks for the great questions and comments.
Looks like Courtney has a question if you want to ask.
Yes. Hi, Julie. Thanks so much for being here.
Great glasses. My goodness. I need new
Thanks.
glasses. My glasses are very last century. Every time I see these big glasses, I'm like, oh, wow, the big glasses are in again, like the 1970s. They're amazing. I need to get some.
Well, it's embracing the need for progressives. I was just like, I'm going to go as big as I possibly can. So I really appreciate what you're saying and have appreciated your books. And so I'm excited about this one. And I'm particularly interested, given my background, having worked in higher ed, and I know yours as well. Like, what do you think about systemic or institutional change that will support this opportunity for adults to flourish at that critical transition point?
I tend to resist the notion that our schools should fix everything. Often we parents go to school as a concept, whether K-12 or high school or higher ed, as like they should, we need, right? Yes, I was there on a college campus as a senior level administrator going, my goodness, when did we go from teaching the humanities and sciences and earth, like all of these subjects to like, wow, we have a responsibility here for the whole student in a much more complex way than we had envisioned. Like I watched that change happen. And I do think all of us who are interested in helping young people emerge, parents, trusted others, school leaders, professors, teachers, counselors, clergy, et cetera, coaches, we all play a role. It should very much be a village rather than saying, nope, it's their job and the rest of us can just. So I'm saying this because we don't teach home ec nearly to the extent we used to. We don't teach shop nearly to the extent we used to. Kids used to learn things like sewing, ironing, cooking, mending things, building things in home ec and shop, but those have in many communities gone by the wayside because we need everything to be more enriching. We think the greater enrichment is the more of the academic subjects, not realizing that humans got to learn this stuff too. In rich, wealthy, affluent, even upper middle class to middle class families, we are often outsourcing the work of life, fixing things, mending things, mowing things, making things, cooking things, often, cleaning things handled by others. So our children just live this enriched life where it's just about Kumon and, this activity. And like they leave our homes and they don't know how to do a damn thing. And that's on us. So we have to bring back into childhood well before they ever get to higher ed. We're supposed to be teaching them the basics. There are great YouTube videos that'll teach them the basics. There's a guy called, I put him as a resource in the back of my book. It's a YouTube channel called Dad, How Do I? And it has over 3 million subscribers and it's short videos on all the stuff of life. So I think higher ed has to pick that up. There are first year 101, college 101 classes that tend to be about navigating the college or the university as a system, as an organism. Those can be very practical and they should also be existential. That is helping students begin to ask the bigger questions so that they can make better use of their course selection and their path through this college. We were creating something when I left Stanford called Reflections, which were small groups for first years with a faculty member and staff, where it was just, the purpose was to ensure they have some good mentors in place and they feel a degree of trust because they've been allowed to ask these big questions, no wrong answer kind of questions, but more diving into who are you and why are you here and how can you make the most? And that, I think, coupled with some very practical advice around how money works, about how money is, what debt is and how money grows and how to be responsible for that 65-year-old self, even though you're only 18, like keeping in mind, or 25, like keeping in mind the future self as you live the present, like all of these balances. I think strengthening the first year experience curriculum. Frankly, I mean, I'm totally biased, but as a former first year dean, I can say, I think this is a fantastic book for that endeavor. It explores absolutely everything from money to relationships to mental health and to disasters befalling you. So I think a stronger curriculum there that is both existential, philosophical, in the dream space, but also the practical space. We could be offering that at community colleges. I know that many places offer something like this, and I think we can continue to up-level those curricular offerings to meet the students we have.
What do you think, Julie? What do you think? Courtney, thank you.
Yes, and Catherine Newman, How to Be a Person. Absolutely. Catherine Newman's book should be assigned. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. I mean, what would it take to make some of the changes in school, like how you just said? Yeah, like many schools, you said it really politely, like many schools aren't doing this. So thank you for that. Like kind of the understatement of the world. Like what might that take? And
Well,
just this, yeah, just
yeah.
as a
So
side note, remember like when Dan Pink said about his last book, you know, if it just had this one outcome of having schools recognize that sleep is good and that no one school should start like before 8:30, like that would be amazing, you know. But if you can riff on that for a while, like
yeah,
what do
absolutely.
you want to see?
Yeah. So, look, whether it's a child who isn't behaving the way we'd like, or a situation like a university or college community or community college community that we're trying to incentivize to do the right things, when we can be rooted in our values around the goodness of the thing and entice people to it rather than beating them over the head with the thing they're doing wrong, we're better off. So I think we have to prove that, you know, students who, just like gap year, like the Global Citizen Year, I used to be on their board. They're an amazing bridge year gap year organization in Oakland. They have data that shows if you've done this 8-month thing with us, homestay in another country, apprenticeship, you know, they've had 10 cohorts now. So they've studied, you know, them through college and then after. They can show a correlation, better grades, greater satisfaction with college, more mentors. They entered more intentional because of the gap year, it seems. And, you know, their outcomes are better. And I think, you know, we ought to be able to demonstrate that students who have this guidance around the practical and the philosophical and everything in between, just a little bit more intentionality about preparing them for, instead of perform for. Let us be better at preparing you. You know, I think we'll have examples of schools that do it well, and other schools will follow suit. They'll show that students are thriving, they're retaining those students. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road for universities. Can we retain more of our first year class? Can we retain more of our underrepresented students? And I think this kind of curriculum helps. And I'm delighted that I'm hearing from nonprofits right now who are catching wind of this book. Like, how can we get a lot of copies of this book, because we need to give it to our kids who are aging out of foster care, to our first generation low income kids in our community college, to, you know, our kids here at the YMCA. And I'm honestly going, I mean, as soon as I dig out of the, you know, craziness of, wow, launching a book, I would love to find some underwriters who could help me get massive quantities of this book to the kids who don't have enough trusted adults and whose families may not be well situated to, you know, to offer them this information. So I'm excited. If the book could be used in that way, I would be delighted.
I'm getting some personal questions about, like, can she say more about that, about the underwriter part?
Well, I would like for some donors to support the delivery of this book, which, you know, retails for $26.99, I think. $26.99, and you can get a 40% bulk discount, I think, going through some bulk order places to buy it and deliver it to these organizations that want to distribute it for free to the kids who are most underserved. If I was independently wealthy, I would set up a mechanism to do it myself. But, you know, I'd like to see that happen.
Yeah, as so many people would hear, Julie. So we're going to take that as a personal challenge, and then just in your spare time, everybody, since everybody is not able to do that, but if everybody could commit to go to Amazon, because that is also a really helpful thing to do for writers. We want Julie to be as well known as she possibly can be. I wanted to ask another thing, Julie, about when you said, this is like, you were talking about the number of people and the number of young people in particular that have mental health diagnoses. Can you talk more about that specifically?
So I have read somewhere that 1 in 2 18-year-olds has a diagnosis of either a mental health challenge or a learning difference, which is not to conflate, to say that the two are the same thing. but is to say that a huge number of our young people have a particular need that needs attention, that might require meds, therapy, doctors, supports, it's resources. And we don't serve anybody's interest by not embracing that fact. We're trying to help all of our young move to a place of greatest self-advocacy. If they have what I call a situation, I refer to everything umbrella term as a situation, they've got to emerge from our homes equipped as possible to self-advocate. But we also want to, hope that they have chosen a place, whether it's a college or a community college or a neighborhood to go work in, a community where people like them are supported and cherished and valued. You don't want to send a kid off to a school that otherizes them on the basis of some kind of diagnosis or situation. And just as if we have a queer kid or a trans kid, we hope they'll go off to a place that embraces them and accepts. I like the word cherish because it's far deeper than accept, tolerate, that cherishes them for who they are. And fortunately, thanks to the internet, we can find out, at what campuses do trans kids thrive, and what campuses is it really, is there a large community of kids who are type 1 diabetes? We can find out all of this now and try to, help our young people, locate themselves in spaces and places where they can continue to grow and thrive.
Yeah, I love that. Continue to grow and thrive. Courtney has a follow-up that I think she's going to ask. Or if you would like me to ask it, Courtney.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I think mine is, it's more, I'm curious about, and especially, I totally agree with you that colleges and schools can't fix everything. But I am curious about this sense of low stakes failure. And I don't know if you talk, I haven't gotten a chance to read the book yet, so I don't know if you talk about this, but I feel like so many things in young adulthood are so high stakes. And I'm wondering what your ideas are or what you're seeing as themes for more low stakes failure, where you can really learn and take some responsibility and incorporate that going forward in your sense of self.
So in chapter 3, you're not perfect. You're here to learn and grow. I try to slay this dragon of childhood, I call it. I quote Elsa from Frozen, "Let it go." And it's just a chapter about no, you're not perfect. None of us is. I even have the reader talking back to me like, "Yes, lady, I am perfect. I'll show you." And I say, "I'm not here to laugh at you when you realize you're not." And that we've done a disservice to kids by saying in childhood, "Perfect, great job," as acting as if the bar is perfection is a hallmark of childhood these days. And I try to really slay that dragon in this book. And instead I say, embrace life's beautiful F words: flailing, failing, floundering, fumbling, falling, and feedback. These are things we fear in a childhood that's meant to be shaped and perfected. A 0 on tomorrow's homework feels like a devastating failure to parents because it will preclude you from entering that university we have in mind for you in 4 years or 8 years or 10 years. And that has made everything high stakes. And so the first thing to embrace the fact that failure and falling and floundering and fumbling those things are our greatest teachers. Parents have to get right with that. Parents have to say, I would rather have a child who has learned to fish rather than handing them a fish, to use the biblical parable. And until parents can wrap their hearts and psyches around that, I mean, it's therapy for parents would be the antidote for what ails so many in childhood today. When parents can accept, my kid is imperfect, I'm imperfect, they're here to learn and grow. The more they learn to do for themselves, the more competent they will get. The more they develop a growth mindset with effort, I can improve, rather than I'm perfect and I'm smart, the better off they will be. So I have an example in the book in the next chapter, which is on developing your good character, of a teacher, an award-winning science teacher who articulates she goes by she and they, her philosophy in her classroom around retakes. I'm just going to try to read what she says because I think it's such a beautiful example. Her name's Kirsten Milks. Kirsten says, she's a high school teacher. I set up spaces where people see mistakes as data, not as evaluation. There's no late penalty for work on nearly all assignments, and every assignment is resubmittable to 100%. Now, she's not got soft standards. Okay. It's not just like, it's all good, everything is fine, you can always get 100. She says, it means that someone will submit their work. I'll give them feedback. They'll submit again. I'll say, oh yeah, not yet, meaning more work is needed, or come here and we'll talk about it, leading to more work. It frees the student up to know that they could fail a test and still be earning an A for the class with continued effort and questioning. I think her approach is wise and magnificent, and I know why students love her and why they learn and grow in her presence. So I'd like to see more of that. And that's why I put it in this book as an example of good character on the part of the teacher.
Yeah. Do you think that teachers are, do you think that teachers are encouraged to do that, or maybe asked a different, more polite way? I don't know, like to be like kind of like encouraging that, or kind of continued effort and questioning. That sounds so great, but like why, what do you think would make that happen more? You've seen so much.
I'm not a K-12 teacher. I've never been in that environment. So what I glean is that teachers at independent schools have more leeway when it comes to these things. Teachers in public districts have less leeway. I think there's a fear of too much subjectivity for parents today who demand to know constantly what happened in school today. Why did you grade it this way? Why does my kid say this, but you, the teacher, have said that? Parents have turned from supporting teachers to supporting their kids no matter what, which is part of the perfectionism and the gradeism and that arms race. And so any subject, and the more subjectivity there is in a system, the more parents of a certain ilk will flip out. They don't trust the teacher. They want to know, this is the test, we can see it. This is the rubric for grading. You gave the child the correct grade that goes with, what their output on the test. I think a lot of parents would be nervous about, look, we're here to learn and grow. Let's have you resubmit, try it again. I strongly advocate for leaders of schools to lean into the wisdom of the Kirsten Milks approach and appreciate not just the learning and growth that'll come for the students, but you're giving so much autonomy back to the teachers, and teachers are being treated less like cogs in a system and more like educators who have the best sense of where a kid is and where that learning edge is and how to help the kid get to where they need to be. But it does take time. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes leaning in. It takes paying a whole lot more attention to kids, treating kids as individual humans, not as little automatons. I know that it takes time and effort, and I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's right.
What do you think is going to happen, like now that we are in a different political environment, speaking for the US?
With what?
I don't know, just approach to this, being away from perfection and all of that, like what things do you think are going to happen? I don't know, it could be from the Secretary of Education, or it could be just having like an avuncular person in the White House leading, or, having the vice president that we do in all of her glory.
I listened to the president's address to Congress, heard a lot of things that I like, really love the notion of free pre-K, preschool for a couple of years. He talked about augmenting at the younger ages 3 and 4 before kindergarten, and then 2 years of free community college. If we began to normalize and pay for it, everybody being able to be in community college, that would be a federal approach to higher education, unlike anything we've seen. And then we might be able to have conversations about, okay, so what do we want to be sure, is offered and learned in this span of years post high school to prepare that person to thrive in the workplace and drive the economy and become leaders out into this 21st century. So that feels like a conversation that might ensue from the notion that a little bit of higher ed should be offered to everybody for free. I think young people today, Gen Z is lighting us up with their activism, whether it's climate or income inequality or systemic racialized violence. There's so much wrong, and there's nothing like somebody who's going to live to be 100. It's nothing like that mindset to say a whole lot needs fixing. I'm imagining all of a sudden public health is going to be more attractive. My father was a public health physician, and I'm not glad he died, but there's a piece of me that is glad he didn't live to see this undermining of public health messages. My father helped eradicate smallpox with a vaccine, and I came into that family and have, so I have a reverence and respect for scientists and public health officials that turns out many in our country don't. But I think a lot of young people are seeing public health as a noble profession. More, maybe they're really much more aware of it than ever before. So whether it's public health or the climate or, how to heal our cities around what we spend our money on and how law enforcement works and serves communities. There's the seemingly intractable problems are there. And I think Gen Z seems to be articulating a voice for themselves, particularly around gun violence. We've raised a generation of, remember Columbine? That was 1999. For those of us old enough to remember the Columbine shooting, we did that. We did what Kelly's doing. We heard the news and went out into the streets and we're saying to people, oh my God, have you heard? There was an active shooter at a high school in Columbine, Colorado, and never again, we all said, and here we are, it's just run of the mill, right? We've raised a whole generation of kids with active shooter drills in kindergarten. All right, take that in for a moment and ask yourself how those young people are going to be different. I think they're going to say these adults have failed us and we cannot count on them. And we need to take charge. And frankly, I will be happy to stand shoulder to shoulder or next to young adults as they lead us out of some of these quagmires we have gotten ourselves into. So I don't want to put it all on them, though. They're still young. They're still learning. They're still growing. But I think we have a lot to learn from them is the point. If we can prepare them to be a little bit more skilled as they leave our homes instead of overmanaged, then we can unleash them on the world.
Hi, Julie. I'm so excited to be listening to your talk, and I'm so excited to start reading this book. But I guess my question is, as I'm about to graduate from college in a few weeks, and it's really scary. I think I really resonate with everything you're saying, but kind of I think if everybody is doing this, it makes so much sense, but it feels really scary to be the only one. I'm gonna take some time off or kind of travel or relax or not get caught up in the rat race. Or I think about my brother who's a freshman in high school, and I can feel myself putting this pressure on him because I get worried that if he's the only one that's living and having fun and everybody else is getting ahead, then he won't he won't make it. And so I guess, what do you say to that? To just kind of having this anxiety and fear for us that it's not going to be okay.
Claire, I'm so glad you're here. Congratulations on finishing up. Where are you in school? Do you mind saying?
Yes, I'm at Amherst in Massachusetts.
Wonderful. I visited that campus and know what a beautiful place it is. There's a saber-toothed tiger fossil skeleton in the museum, which my son and I just loved because he's really into saber-toothed tigers. So congrats to you. And here's what I want to say. I don't think it's get ahead or have fun. I really think those are, it's sort of a false binary. Yeah, it exists. There's a way of living life that is just about having fun and a way of living life that's just about getting ahead. But I'm interested in different dimensions. I truly believe if you've had a decent education, K-12, if you get to community college, or you get up and out to the military, or you get out to a four-year college, you are in a position to make choices for yourself around work that create a strong likelihood that work itself will be joyful and fun. I don't know if get ahead is about a certain salary. You know, I need to get ahead. I need to be I know so many miserable people who are rich, but I've given it away, but miserable. They've gotten ahead, but they have no friends. Everyone hates them because they're perfectionistic assholes. Doesn't matter how rich they are, they're going to have 16 people at their funeral who feel obligated to be there. I don't know about you, but that's not what I'm going for. Okay. So I'm not saying every rich person is an asshole. I'm not saying, right. I'm just saying, like, the get ahead at all costs, big costs often. So I'm interested in how can we lean into, like that Mary Oliver quote, what do you want to do with your one wild and precious life? I'm interested in you, Claire, figuring that out. And here I described this in chapter 5, stop pleasing others. They have no idea who you are. That's the chapter title. At the end, there's a Venn diagram. After I tell my story about going to law school, wanting to help people, being so insecure, I chose a corporate law offer, worked for a corporate law firm, good at it, but miserable. I finally sit with myself around, Julie, you've made bad choices. You're getting ahead. Everybody's applauding you. Money, prestige, fancy outfits, briefcases, and yet you're miserable. Why? Because you, Julie, are not here on the planet to do this work. Your work is humans at the level of the individual human. I said to myself, as I was one of 7 lawyers, the junior most lawyer on a team litigating a medical device lawsuit, and our clients won. And winning that lawsuit meant the device was freed up and now millions of people could use this important medical device. I realized, as delighted as I was in the victory, I realized about myself, I would rather hand a human the life-saving medical device than fight about the right for millions of people to have access to it. It's important that people do that work. I just want my work to be at the level of the individual human. And I learned that about myself. I decided to do an exercise with myself. I was good at the corporate law. I was treated well. I was mentored, given opportunity. All signs looked like I was going to make it. Okay. I was good at it. I learned it's not enough to be good at it. You have to also love it for it to be your life's work. Okay. If you're just loving it and you're not very good at it and don't, through your effort, have a likelihood of getting better at it, it shouldn't be your work. You're not, you know, it's probably not going to be remunerative. You're not going to earn money from it. It's going to be your hobby, your thing on the side. Good at and love is the sweet spot for a fantastic professional life. And then it doesn't have to be a life like, oh my God, I can't wait to retire from this. I hate it. No, I'm tired of the narrative about work and toil and be miserable, so that then one day, if I live long enough, I can enjoy. I reject that. And I realize there's some inherent privilege in what I'm saying. I understand some people, particularly coming up out of tough circumstances, are like, I just need a steady job to lift myself and my family up and out of this. And even if I don't love it, I'm going to do it. But that then becomes their purpose and their reward. And there's a, like, I'm doing this for a reason that is tangible, as opposed to like, I'm just trying to strive and get ahead for the sake of getting ahead to please some amorphous set of people I can't even picture. Okay. You have the right to decide, what am I good at? What do I love? And choose work and choose community, choose to be in relationship, you know, in that same sweet spot of where do I find belonging, rather than, well, I should be with this person because they went to the right schools. The right schools will not keep you warm at night, will not make you want to, you know, snuggle in bed in the morning on a Saturday. The person who has the right resume, that has nothing to do with whether they're the right person for you. Same with work. So I'm trying to incentivize, inspire young readers to say, oh, hey, yes, I am from a family of lawyers who seem to think law is the only thing going, but I know I'm a dancer. I am here in this book to say, be a dancer. And yes, know that it's on you to pay your bills, and you will. I have artists in these pages featured in the money chapter on how they pay down student debt as artists. And we're so disciplined, they figured that out and now are building a life without debt. Okay. And you may be from a family of dancers and be like, doggone it, I'm sick and tired of these artists. I want to be an investment banker. And I'm here saying more power to you. Go to Wall Street. I'm agnostic about what a human should do. I'm just saying it should be up to you. So that's the thing. Lean into this with pleasure and joy. You're going to try a bunch of different things and you're going to learn a lot about yourself. And some of the worst jobs are going to be awesome in retrospect because they'll have taught you the most about what you want and need and what you will not tolerate. And those are valuable life lessons, often accrued in one's 20s.
That's so awesome. Thank you for that.
I'm excited for you, Claire.
This feels like a denouement type question after that awesome one before. But I'm curious for you, you started the book, you probably had some conception about what it was going to be and what, and probably deepen things, in some ways deepen things you already thought, but like where were you changed yourself in writing this book? Like what did surprise you? What insights did you have you didn't have when you started? I'm curious, like what was surprising to you?
Chad, I was asked to write it. My first book was a New York Times bestseller on the harm of helicopter parenting. My publisher said, will you write a sequel? I signed a contract and then really kind of regretted having signed a contract because I didn't know what I wanted to, I didn't know how to be an authority on the subject of adulting. And as I alluded to at the beginning, I finally found my way in by saying, I am not smarter and wiser than you. I'm just older and I have a lot of compassion. And I know that humans learn from the stories of other humans. And so I'm going to try to assemble good stories that will help you feel seen, and less alone. And every person's going to take. So once I found I humbled myself. You don't have to be an authority, wise sage on a hill pronouncing. No, instead you can just be a caring, compassionate human who's assembled a lot of good human stories. And once I got that humility and vulnerability, I was like, okay, I can exist in this space. And so there's that sort of dichotomy, like they wrote a book, author of book, and yet saying, I'm no better than you. I'm here with an offering. It's sort of, that has been wonderful to discover. I think when I was younger, I thought it was all about authority. And maybe I do have authority with a small a, having still written this book, but in other words, I realized it wasn't about there is a right answer, there is a right way. I had to assemble a set of topics that I felt were the right offering. Hopefully I didn't leave out something major. Hopefully there's not a lot that's superfluous, but I think that was the delight in discovering, almost like Chad, when I was an administrator at Stanford, associate vice provost and dean of freshman and undergraduate advising, I learned as a senior administrator, I need to make room for the junior people to show up in my meetings by shutting up. The more senior we are, I think the less we should speak. We should articulate a problem, create a question, throw some ideas out and sit back and button our lips. I'm an extrovert. You can see I don't have trouble talking. Like button my lip, listen, listen, listen. And therefore, the younger people feel more space to speak. And I only need to add if somehow my the ideas I think were great coming out of my brain have not already been articulated by someone else. It is me trying to be equal in an environment where I might hierarchically be at the top. I'm trying to say, no, actually the better shape is a circle, and I am joining you in this circle and we're going to share some stuff. And I really enjoy inhabiting that space on the page. It's tricky on the page because it's not a meeting with actual humans. It's me in a one-way conversation with a reader I can't picture, but I've tried to craft a narrative that sounds like, I am here caring deeply about you, trying to anticipate your questions, your needs and concerns. I talk back to you on the page. I know you're talking back to me. I respond to that. And so it's a very different narrative in a craft sense. And I enjoy developing that and I feel good about it.
Thank you, Julie. I actually had one quick question, and then I feel like we've taken so much of your time, but but I was just curious, and this might be too personal, but I feel like you do talk about your mom in your book, so I feel like I could maybe ask this, but I'm just curious how much your relationship with your mom has sort of like informed. Oh my God, I can't believe you've just made me so emotional. I feel like I'm almost gonna cry, but sorry.
You're good. You're good. Yep.
Okay. Like, how much has that relationship sort of informed your like all of your books and your relationship with your kids? And I'm just curious if you could talk more about that.
Katie, thank you. Don't apologize. Thank you for seeing me so clearly, because you're asking a very pertinent question. If you heard me on Fresh Air, I had the great privilege to be on Fresh Air a couple weeks back, and I thought it was going to be about your turn, but it was like, Julie's written this book, but let us tell you more about what we've learned about Julie from reading her memoir on race, Real American, which very much deals with the fact that I have this amazing mother who's white, who fell in love with my Black daddy and gave birth to me. And as I've struggled with my racial identity and locating belonging, having been raised in mostly white spaces, I've had a lot of anger around my upbringing and resentment. And my father died, as you know, many decades ago. So my mother's been the one who's been here on this journey with me. And we all lived together here in Palo Alto to afford Palo Alto. We bought a house together, which is its own complication. And my mother is an amazingly, fiercely bright, also emotionally intelligent person. And to her credit, and I credit her for much, she's never said, I wish you wouldn't be telling these stories. All she said is, all I ever wanted was for you to love yourself as a Black woman. And the fact that I'm here now in this, and have been since about age 39, I'm 53 now, brings my mother joy, even as some of the things that I have to say in the self-loving Black female space is painful for her as a very awakened white woman to hear. I think I in part was a helicopter parent because the way I was raised, I mean, it's too much to go into here, but I think the first book, How to Raise an Adult, reflects in part my own helicopter parenting tendencies, which were happening in a home in which I also lived with my own mother. So my trying to shape my kids' environment was in part because I felt I had a judging mother here in the house constantly, which was hard. I'm trying to please her, meet her approval, but also annoyed by like just those dynamics very present in how I raise my own children. Certainly the second book on race. And in this book, I quote my mom extensively, particularly around good character. In fact, at some point I say, I'm laughing at how often my mother is coming up here, but all of those embedded wisdoms around grace and patience and, hard work and all of that, which comes up in the character chapter, come from my mother. And I'm grateful for that. So she's everywhere in my work, implicitly or explicitly. And teaser, spoiler alert, if I have any say over the matter, my fourth book will be a mother-daughter memoir co-written with the amazing Jeannie Lythcott. We're working on a book proposal right now, and it's going to be why we chose to live together, like who we were leading up to that choice. We call it before, during, which was, the upsides of three-generational living, but the tremendous hell of it as well, around lack of privacy and lack of boundaries and lack of independence and all that she lost by coming to this life with us and all that we lost in it, on top of all that we both gained. And then after, which is the lessons learned and how we unpacked all the what and did the work and got to this place of tremendous mutual respect. And she's going to write a chapter and I'm going to write a chapter and so on. We're going to march through the book that way, not trying to agree, not even talking about the same incidents, but just what was hard for her, what was hard for me, what was hard, And so you're not going to be told who to root for or how it ended or what, you the reader, as with this book, it's going to be a mirror. Like, what do you need to see in this story? I think you write memoir, you publish memoir to be of service. So that memoir will be trying to serve those who find themselves in a three-generational living environment, or two, you as an adult with your parent. by choice or by fiat. And so that book I hope will be coming out I hope we get a book deal this summer, and I hope that book comes out in 2 years. And that would be a joy to write a book with my mother. And I'm very much crossing my fingers for that.
Yeah, we're all crossing our fingers with you, Julie. Can you say something about what you said back to your publisher when they said that they wanted this book second? And yeah, what you said.
Yeah, you remember that. Yeah, so let's do the timeline. I'm an improbable first-time author. I go back to school in my 40s to try to write better. I get a book, I pull together a book proposal, write a book, it becomes this, it sells well. 2015, becomes a New York Times bestseller. In the spring of 2016, while I'm still at CCA here in the city getting my MFA. So this was a side gig while I was getting my MFA. I was working on a thesis related to race, which I felt was the edgy topic I should have gone to grad school to write about in my 40s. So my editor messages me on Facebook and she says, Julie, I can tell you're completing some work. When am I going to see those pages? And I was like, oh, cool. They're interested. I say to my agent, okay, here's my thesis. And my agent goes to the publishing house and says, this is Julie's work. She's got this book ready. And they said, yes, we will publish that, but we also want a sequel to this. And we want the sequel to come first. Now, this is when I learned the value of an agent, y'all. I didn't know any of this was happening. My agent said, the memoir is ready. It wasn't completed like this, but it was a complete draft, probably 2/3 the length of the final book. It had to be augmented and edited. My agent said, the memoir is ready. If there is to be a sequel, it will come second. Thank you, Kim Witherspoon at Inkwell Management. So she presented that deal to me. And I was like, I don't want to write a sequel. She was like, let me tell you how this went down. Okay. They wanted a sequel. Then they were going to publish your little memoir on race. You know, I got them to swap it. And I was like, all right. So I got my 2-book deal, finished this thing. This thing came out in the fall of 2017 and toured it, which was great. They sent me on a book tour, which was amazing. And so around about mid 2018, I tried to write this thing and failed and failed and failed for a year. I was turning in stuff that they hated. They said it was terrible. They didn't like what I was doing. I didn't have the voice. I didn't know how to be an authority. I didn't know how to, you know, what topics to include. I wanted it to be about relationships. They said you have to write about 401ks. I was like, what? And I even had one on the team say 20-somethings have been told they just need to focus on their career. It's not about relationships. I said, yes. And I think that's terrible advice. So my book is going to talk about all of it. Work and relationships are the twin tracks that your train barrels down in your life. If life is a train ride, work and relationships must be in balance. If you just focus on work, you're going to go careening off. Okay. I got all these weird metaphors. I talk about life as a bicycle ride and your mind and body are the wheels. Like you got to look after these things. That's how you propel forward. Anyway, so that's the story. Thank you to my agent for insisting that the sequel would come third. And Kelly, for years, I regretted signing that contract. I even contemplated I might have to give this part of the advance I had already received back when I was failing. You know, just getting rejections on the papers I was submitting. I called it the stepchild I did not want to adopt. Like they're making me write this book. Poor me. I was really woe is me about it. And then when I finally wrote what is now chapter 5, Stop Pleasing Others, summoning my deanly voice and compassion and my own stories and the stories of other people at the end. And I submitted that. My editor said, I don't know what you did, but you did it. And we want more of that. Go. And that was the summer of 2019. And so I was writing. And then the pandemic hit and I probably completed 2/3 of the book, half to 2/3 of the book in the pandemic, which, you know, was hard, very hard. And of course I had to weave the pandemic into the book without making it about the pandemic, but referencing it so it wouldn't seem, you know, oblivious to the fact that this was happening.
Whoa. So I didn't actually realize that you were God, it's amazing. I get it that it doesn't feel like it was fast to you. But wow, that is really, really fast. That was really, really fast.
Yeah. It takes me about 2 years to write a book when I'm finally in it, from writing to publication. Well, that's not true. It took me 2 years, a year and a half with it. And then you turn it over to them and they do their magic to make it a book.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm gonna say I know some people need to leave, and Julie, you have been so generous with your time. I just wondered if you could just spend like a tiny little bit of time, and you also can be like our author last week. She was like on the dot of 60, like we're done. And I was like, would you answer one more question? She was like, no, I don't think so. And it was totally fine. It was great. So you can be like that. But I was wondering if you would talk just a tiny bit about your favorite bookstores, for the less experienced writers that we all meet, like what are the things that we can do? It all just looks so incredibly successful from the outside. I really, and my God, like it totally is, but you sharing with us, like you letting us be really insiders in your life is so amazing. It's funny. I got a little message from a really good friend who's here tonight, who also just said, oh, and this part of my life was such a failure. And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding? Like it's, that piece is also so interesting about how we don't spot enough what people feel. But I mean, those are two really different things. So
failure, I mean, I think you're saying, and you direct messaged me, but you are not failing. And I appreciate the love in that, but I want to claim it. I want to say, you know what, I was failing. The task was write a book. I kept writing things that they rejected. That very much felt like failure. I learned from it. I grew from it. I'm not sorry I experienced it. I had to go down into that deep well and splash around and not know what the heck I was doing and emerge from that. And I'm proud of that. I can chart that growth and it feels good. And I know the despair that I felt. So that for people who are starting out, you got to have a writing practice and you got to have a reading practice. We get better at writing by reading. We become, I think, more thoughtful and close readers by writing. So they do go hand in hand. And so don't you dare be, I'm writing a novel if you can't name your 20 favorite novels, or I'm writing memoir if you can't name favorites. You've got to be immersed in the world you're seeking to join. You should have a regular writing practice. Some people say you got to write every single day. I've never in my life done that. I'm more of a binge writing person. So I go all out for many, 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 many hours a day when I'm doing my book writing. I'm trying to change that up to have a little bit more balance in my life now. So I have a little bit of writing and a little bit of reading and a little bit of Duolingo so I can learn Spanish, and a little bit of time with friends and time with family and all of the other work. And rather than I'm writing this book and only this book, don't talk to me, which is how I wrote the first 3 books, frankly. Procrastinator. So I put it off and I've just got to stack, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week with that thing. And so I don't advise that, but I know that that's the way I have been, and I'm interested in, can I change it up to have a little bit more balance? A writing group is very wonderful. A group of people who are, people you can learn from and grow as a result of feedback from. So you can often find out about writing groups by going to your local bookstore and seeing what people are posting. And, I love Kepler's here in Menlo Park, California. They're my #1 partner. When How to Raise an Adult made it to 1,000 copies sold there, they toasted me with champagne, which was so lovely. And I've hosted my launch events since. And I also love Books Inc., which is throughout many parts of the Bay Area. I love Book Passage in Corte Madera, up in Marin County. There's so many great bookstores in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're very fortunate. I've been fortunate to be at Powell's in Portland, and Tattered Cover in Denver, and Book People in Austin, and Politics and Prose in DC, and Sisters Uptown Bookstore in Harlem, and Esselwan Books in the Crenshaw in LA. There are so many great bookstores. Iconoclast Books in Ketchum, Idaho. So important that we darken the doorsteps, either literally or online, of our independent bookstores. I do think they are part of the flowing lifeblood of an intellectually curious, nurtured community. So it's easier to buy a book from the big behemoth. I would love for you to review my book there, but buy your books elsewhere. Other people need your money, like bookshop.org, this new online bookstore that has come out in the pandemic that gives a portion of the proceeds to independent bookstores. So that's what's your Duolingo handle? I have no idea. Somebody messaged me. I don't know what my handle is because I don't know. I'm not on social media and Duolingo, but maybe I need to be. All right. I got to show you some swag. We're nearing the end, and I do have some swag related to this book. So can I just share? If you're interested, I'm giving away. I have had an artist friend develop what we call the manifesto that goes with this book. So Your Turn, the book has a poster. This is a tiny version. It actually comes in 11 by 17. And it's a summary of the book's advice in a more conversational way, like a summary of each chapter. And it's not a spiral because it's not like there's a path. It's just concentric circles. And you just decide where you want to put yourself down and what you want to work on. So this comes in 11 by 17. And go ahead.
So much quicker to just read that. That's gonna be great.
I know, exactly. It's the TLDR. All right. And I've got, if you want the real sort of tweet length, Andrew, funny man, we have free pencils that say things like, adults make mistakes, have an eraser. Essential adulting tools. You get 3 of these plus a sharpener, because I've been told that millennials and Gen Zs don't have sharpeners. So it's a sharpener, 3 pencils, and an 11 by 17 poster for free coming your way. If you DM me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, I will get a set of swag out to you. And I just ask that you post about it on social, because that's how people, get to know about the book. I'll pop my social handle here in the chat for anyone who's interested. It's J Lythcott-Haims, wherever social media happens. Maybe Duolingo even, I don't even know.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julie. Did you mention earlier that there was a list of organizations who are interested in a bulk book buy?
I don't have a list. I've been getting emails and just responding like, okay, I hope, I'm just starting to aggregate a spreadsheet. So if there is interest on the part of anybody who's been watching tonight, maybe Katie, you can be the conduit and help us connect and just develop that concept more.
Absolutely. Yeah. If anyone wants to email me, and then we'll send this out to everybody who registered and stuff as well. But yes.
I will name one. It's a massive organization. They serve 1.7 million young people a year, and they are called, just find the email. They have a fairly generic name. Let's see. It is Communities in Schools. And they serve Communities in Schools.
Perfect.
We reach over 1.7 million students a year. We place caring adults in schools to support the most vulnerable students and communities. Our work is to provide students with social and emotional supports, as well as to provide or connect them to services in the community to support their non-academic challenges, et cetera. They obviously don't have 1.7 million high school graduates every year. They're working with a whole swath of kids, but I'm interested in partnering with them to figure out, how to help the kids, their oldest set, who are emerging out into adulthood. So that's an example of a community that I'd love to partner with. They're all over the country, and sounds like they're doing good.
If there's anyone on this call who's interested in that sort of relationship or donations, we would certainly want to help connect the right people. So you can just email me, and you'll get you get a lot of emails from me. So you'll get another one, but yeah, just email me. Thank you, Julie. And I think, yeah, thank you so much.
So people always say, oh, applause doesn't really work on Zoom. Yes, it does. Let's everybody give Julie an amazing round of applause. And we just learned so much, Julie, and to get to be in community with you again. Wow.
I appreciate you, Kelly Close and Katie and everybody involved in this community. I really think I think we all know how fortunate we are to have Kelly and company in our lives, and just keep doing what you do. It will always be an honor to be asked to join you as an author, as a conversationalist, or just to be in community as one of the many grateful people listening to a great conversation. So thanks. Round of applause to Kelly and company.
Yeah. I was counting also I think we hit most decades here, but thank you especially for young people joining. And you know, if you're on the younger side and you want us to give some presents of Julie's books to specific adults, we would love to do that as well. I want to say my last thing is Julie is so cool. There's someone is here who also is like, oh, I just bought like 10 copies of her book, and you know, I'm giving them to all of these people, so you can see how much light you're spreading. So
I appreciate it. Somebody did ask about Spanish. I don't yet have any foreign language deals. I do very much hope that this book will find its way into the countries, into the communities where it can be embraced. So I will be crossing my fingers for a Spanish language translation and others.